Hey everyone, I'm Krista McGuire with TEA in the special education area, and just wanted to thank you for joining us. As many of you know, we issued some guidance and implementation questions and answers last week, and so Michelle Reeves, our state dyslexia coordinator, is with us today to kind of go over some highlights of that, and I will turn it over to you, Michelle.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to start with sharing my screen. So you guys let me know that you see it here in just a second. Everybody seeing it?
Showing up clearly. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So like Kristen said, there are lots of changes, and I'm going to walk you through those, but to get to our website, that's where we're going to start. I want to start with the TEA homepage. So if you are on our TEA homepage at tea.texas.gov, go to the A to Z index, click on S, scroll down just a little bit to special education, click there. And then over here on the right, dyslexia, and then that will take you to our page. So if you scroll down, you will see this gray box that was actually added back in June. And we added information about the brief overview video of the bill here in June. I'm going to go through this whole box, but as you see, there's quite a few bullets here, but I'm going to start at the bottom because we're going to spend most of our time in this first bullet up here. So if you click on the brief overview video of the bill, you will see this right here. So the video outlines the specific changes to dyslexia evaluation, identification, and instruction. And then going up to the next is our appendixes. These were updated. Let's see if I can't see my tabs. So there we go. Okay. So these were updated and they were posted last week. There was no additional information added. However, we did strike through all of the questions and answers that no longer provide the correct guidance. So we do recommend that you review this document. And we also did that with our Spanish version as well. Okay, going back to our dyslexia page. The next bullet is our TEA HB 3928 dyslexia evaluation, identification, and instruction. So this was also posted last week. This TAA summarizes the changes of HB 3928 and links to the HB 3928 FAQ. And then you'll notice the next bullet here, there is not a link. It is coming. We are working on this very, very diligently. This form is coming soon. Like I said, if a student is suspected of having dyslexia and maybe a child with a disability, including when data supports a suspicion after the reading diagnostic assessment under TEC 28.006 or screening under TEC 38.003, LEAs must distribute this form to parents. This form summarizes the rights that might be additional to those offered under Section 504. So again, it is coming soon and it will be linked right here. All right, so this takes us to our FAQ. Let me click on that tab from up here. All right, this FAQ, if you've seen it, it currently contains 22 questions and is broken into sections. We're going to go through each of these sections today. We will not talk about every single question and answer, but we're going to highlight a lot of them. So I'm going to begin at the top of this FAQ. So it is dyslexia evaluation, identification, and instruction with House Bill 3928. So the FAQ begins with a brief summary about HB 3928. and the required changes. However, please note that TEA is providing this document to assist in the implementation of HB 3928 as the law is currently in effect. Also, please be aware that these questions and answers are subject to modification and revision as the field TEA parent guardians learn more about the bill's impact and upcoming decisions of the SBOE. So you notice there's a date here. It says posted August 3rd, 2023. When this is revised or updated, we will update that information there. Kristen, is there anything you want to add to that or?
No, I think that's good. We'll indicate which questions have been updated as well.
Okay, great. All right, the next part are the definitions. So we thought it was very important. These definitions were added to provide clarification of terms used throughout this document. I'll highlight just a couple that are in here that you may not, that may be new terms to you. The evidence-based dyslexia program, provider of dyslexia instruction. This one's not a new term, but we do have it outlined here, especially designed instruction. So again, it's critical to review these definitions in order to make sure you understand everything that's in the FAQ. All right, effective dates. So HB 3928 became effective on June 10th, 2023, when Governor Abbott signed the legislation. The bill applies the beginning of the 2023-24 school year. This means that LEAs must begin implementing the bill on the first day of instruction for the 23-24 school year. Also, there are two provisions in HB 3928 that require actions and decisions by the SBOE. So the first one is requirement that the SBOE dyslexia handbook no longer provides a distinction between standard protocol dyslexia instruction and other types of direct dyslexia instruction, including specially designed instruction and determining, and then the next one is determining training requirements and credentials for a person with a specific knowledge in the reading process, dyslexia related disorders, dyslexia instruction to serve on the LEA's multidisciplinary team. Okay, the next section in the FAQ is child find in the initial evaluation process. Before I go on, just want to check with you again, Kristen. Is there anything I left out you'd like to add there?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. So number one provides more information on the new required parent form. Number two, the bill has created TEC 29.0031 that now states dyslexia is an example of and meets the definition of a specific learning disability under IDEA. There are specific evaluation domains and questions outlined in the handbook that must be used when determining the presence of dyslexia. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit. All of that is included here. Okay, moving to the next section. Required member of the multidisciplinary team and ARD committee. So looking at number 3, the membership requirements are a licensed dyslexia therapist, LDT, advanced dyslexia related certification, and if neither are available, an individual who meets the SBO's training requirements. Because SBOE must decide on certain qualifications and training requirements, each LEA should analyze the current credentials and qualifications of existing staff and determine who is most appropriately trained to meet the specific knowledge required by the bill.
I'll
Right.
just add in again, and you just said that, but just to reiterate, because that is very directly an SBOE decision in the bill, that we will need to wait for their determination of who meets the training requirements and that advanced certification. So, we anticipate that to be done, at the same pace as their changes to their handbook.
Thank you. All right, I'm scrolling down to number 6, determining eligibility for special education and related services. So number 6, an evidence-based dyslexia program, also known as standard protocol dyslexia instruction, is considered specially designed instruction and is a special education service. So any student needing the evidence-based dyslexia program containing all elements in the handbook or what is currently considered to be standard protocol dyslexia instruction should now be treated as reaching eligibility for prong 2.
And just to add, in terms of prong 2, it describes what prong 2 is, but those who might be unfamiliar, as far as eligibility for special education, you have to be identified with a disability. And because of that disability, you require specialized instruction or specially designed instruction. And so that's just to kind of summarize what Michelle was saying, is that if the student is identified with dyslexia and requires the provision of the evidence-based dyslexia program, or what she said is currently called standard protocol dyslexia instruction in the handbook, that would meet eligibility requirements for special education, because that is now considered specially designed instruction always. It could have been before, but it is will always be considered that at this point.
Thank you. All right, looking at number 7. So I'm going to start with the question is, what about students who currently receive evidence-based dyslexia programs through an accommodation plan under Section 504? So again, just a reminder that we are kind of summarizing the FAQ, and we highly recommend that you go through and read it with entirety. But I'm going to just, again, hit the high points in number 7. So LEAs cannot unilaterally decide to discontinue the provision of an evidence-based dyslexia program to a student who currently receives it through a Section 504 plan. As the field begins to transition to change that a student's identification of dyslexia and need for an evidence-based dyslexia program will be considered specially designed instruction and qualifies the student as eligible for special education and related services, action will be required for those students whose LEAs currently offer the evidence-based dyslexia program through Section 504. Section 504 committees must begin the process of discussing a student's continued need for an evidence-based dyslexia program and submitting referrals for FIEs. As LEAs begin this transition, they are encouraged to prioritize referrals for FIEs during this time frame to those students who are currently receiving this type of instruction through a 504 plan because the LEA initially declined to evaluate under IDEA, as well as to those students who are not progressing appropriately through their evidence-based dyslexia program. All right, I'll stop a second. Is there anything else, Kristen, you'd like to add?
No.
All right, number 8. So beginning with the 2023-24 school year, which is the school year in which HB 3928 first applies, a student will not be entitled to receive an evidence-based dyslexia program if a parent refuses to consent. So I do recommend additionally reading questions 9 and 10 for more guidance on this, but then I'm again going back to you, Kristen. Is there anything else you'd like to add here?
I will just say, to clarify, and again, the reason behind that, or the interpretation behind that, is because the evidence-based dyslexia program is a special education service. It is specially designed instruction. That is why it will be provided under special education through an IEP, an individualized education program, rather than under any other general education service.
All right, and this takes us to determining and documenting special education and related services in the IEP. And Kristen is going to go through number 12 to talk about the instructional arrangements coding. Kristen, just let me know if is this good?
Okay. Yeah, that's good. So with this change, with this change, that the evidence-based dyslexia program, or any dyslexia program that meets all of the requirements in the handbook, because the bill reiterates that this is a it's special education service. It is specially designed instruction. You know, the majority of the time, vast majority of the time, these students are being, you know, pulled out of a class or maybe placed in an elective and pulled into these classes or these groups for dyslexia instruction. Because that is a special ed service and will always be considered a special ed service moving forward, that is an impact that wasn't an impact necessarily in previous years for school districts when they're making instructional arrangement decisions. So, you know, for those who might not know listening, so our state funds special education based on setting or based on instructional arrangement. And so it gets kind of muddy and kind of confusing sometimes when you're talking about, you know, where a student is getting instruction doesn't necessarily, you know, reflect the types of instruction they're getting. But in this case, when you're looking at a program that is a specially designed instruction, and it is, you know, provided from that lens as a special education service, the guidance has changed to say that this is now a special ed location for purposes of instructional arrangement. So in terms of, you know, necessarily parent impact, it's not our student impact. That's not really a, you know, necessarily an impact on them. Where that is an impact will be on school districts, of course, as they're documenting the locations of those special ed services. So in this case, we are, if the dyslexia program is the only service that a student is receiving, we are, the guidance here says that the instructional arrangement would be what's called a 41, which is essentially less than 21% of the child's school day is spent in a special education setting. So again, it's about the service that's provided. And because they are not, it's not being provided in class, in regular class, it's being provided outside of that, you know, to students who don't have, or, you know, it's not being provided to students who don't have dyslexia. That's how it got to, you know, that 41 or that special education setting. Now, of course, Michelle will mention this here in a little bit about providers of dyslexia instruction. Because those providers don't always have to be special education teacher certified, there is a, you know, a requirement to balance that out, because obviously when you get, you know, when you receive special education services, you require the services of a special education teacher. In terms of dyslexia instruction, a provider needs to be obviously fully trained in those instructional materials for dyslexia for their local district, but you still need a special education teacher involved in the process. And so you'll see a lot of kind of these descriptions in the chart is about how a special education teacher would either collaborate with the provider of dyslexia instruction or, you know, potentially provide other specialized supports in the students' other content areas, or maybe indirect supports with their other teachers. So we try to give examples here about, you know, different types of arrangements you would see. One, you know, A, of course, is only getting the evidence-based program, and then it kind of goes from there in terms of the instructional arrangements or the types of services that they're getting. So we provided that just to try and give you some you know, most common scenarios. And so, or the most common outlines, I think, as we see, we have been asked to kind of create some different scenarios, and we can look into that as well, but just wanted to let you know that.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next section, which is impacts on PAMS coding and program intent codes, so our PIC codes. Just stay tuned for more information. There is a little bit of information here as well. And then also just thinking about our dyslexia allotment. I think these are just things that as we move forward that we need to keep all of these in mind with our PIC codes 37 and 43 in particular. Kristen, is there anything else you'd like to add there?
No.
Okay. Right, and then we have our providers of dyslexia instruction. So every provider of dyslexia instruction must be fully trained in the LEA's adopted instructional material for students with dyslexia. And I'm going to move down to progress reporting, number 18. So any student that is provided an evidence-based reading program under Section 504 accommodation plan must have a progress report prepared and communicated to a parent specifically on the student's progress as a result of that program at least once per grading period. And to the extent that an IEP goal progress report would not comply with this requirement for a student receiving special education and related services, a separate progress report should be sent to comply with this piece of the bill.
I wanted to just add, I meant to say this in the kind of 504 discussion and the impact of 23-24. I want to just make sure and reiterate that as we're referring to kind of this move towards those who are currently receiving the evidence-based program or standard protocol under a 504 plan, in no way is anyone saying to just cut those students out of instruction and just make that decision. What the question or the guidance there, or the implementation answers there is essentially, 504 committees, when they start meeting, they need to discuss the student's continued need for that instruction. And if the continued need exists, then a special education referral should then take place. So I want to make sure that people don't get the message that oh, well, we don't provide it under 504 anymore, so those kids aren't eligible. There is, absent any other decisions from the state board. And again, just to reiterate what Michelle said, we tried to put some guidance out as best we could because we knew this bill was in effect the 23-24 school year. So unless the state board makes any other, changes to that, then we would expect, by no later than the end of the 24-25 school year, those, 504 committees will have met and made those referrals or, made the determinations about whether a student continues to need services. I also want to say that, we have gotten a lot of questions and there is a question that addresses it globally, but in terms of, we're also never saying that a student identified with dyslexia would never have a Section 504 plan. So if you have a student who has dyslexia, who just requires kind of instructional accommodations to access the school environment, if they no longer have that need for, direct dyslexia instruction, that could be potentially an example of a student with dyslexia who might be on a 504 accommodation plan. So just wanted to, kind of clarify that a little bit because we have gotten a few questions on, at what point would it ever be appropriate to have someone on a 504 plan? So just wanted to throw that out.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to start with required board policy. This is number 19. Adopt and implement a policy requiring the district or school to comply with all rules and standards adopted by the SBOE to implement the dyslexia program, including the handbook and guidance published by the commissioner. So yes, this was already a rule, and we state that in the FAQ that while a district or school was already required to comply with these requirements prior to the enactment of this law, the explicit local policy requirement may assist boards staying directly involved in the LEA's implementation of the dyslexia program requirements. Okay, on 20, impact on dyslexia monitoring. The agency must now develop procedures to solicit input from parents of students enrolled in an LEA during the agency's monitoring of an LEA's implementation of the SBOE's dyslexia program. 21, this will This is talking about impacts for dysgraphia. So the bill primarily addresses dyslexia. However, it is reasonable to interpret that most of the bill's requirements as applying to suspicions of evaluation for and instruction for dysgraphia. And then our very last question. The bill requirement not exclusive to dyslexia, disciplinary placements. The bill amended TEC 37.006 and 37.023 to require that each school district provide information to a student's parent regarding the process for requesting an FIE when the student is placed in a DAEP and as part of the student's personalized transition plan when returning to campus from a DAEP. So before I wrap up the FAQ, Kristen, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just on that one in particular, because it was put into this bill, which, otherwise focused entirely on dyslexia. This is one piece that I think some, district administrators might miss. So this is probably something to just make sure. And, those of you who are in the special populations world in a district, to make sure that your other district administrators know this. I know just kind of background from, how I understood the conversations of how it got placed in there was, again, the premise that, studies have shown that, students that have some disciplinary, exclusionary discipline consequences may have unidentified disabilities. So that's kind of the genesis of this getting into that bill. But essentially, they'll, as Michelle said, you have to provide information on how a parent can request an evaluation for special ed upon placement in that DAEP or and in their personalized transition plan back to the regular campus. So in this guidance, we did say that, potentially a district could use the otherwise required student handbook statement that is required in, for all districts in terms of students who have learning difficulties or may need special education. So that is a way, definitely not required. It's just, simply that you give them information on how they could, the process for requesting that. This is the only thing in the bill that is not applicable to charter schools as well. So I'll just, point that out. So because the DAEP pieces of chapter 37 are not applicable to charter schools. So everything else is applicable. So just wanted to mention that. Okay.
Well, this wraps up the information that we were going to share today. We thank you for being here. I do want to encourage you to read the FAQ in its entirety, since we pretty much kind of summarized most of the information. If you have questions, we encourage you to please send them to sped@tea.texas.gov.
And I do want to throw out that, obviously I've looked at, I know we've gotten some questions through the Q&A, and as Anna mentioned, she is collecting those and will send them over our way so that we can have them for purposes of, either answering within an FAQ or maybe answering on another webinar. But we are getting your questions, and, we'll definitely review them, and there will be updates to the FAQ. Obviously once the form is finished, we'll put some more information in the FAQ about that. So there will be, definitely opportunity for revision if we continue to get the same questions. So we will review those questions and appreciate you asking them.
And it looks like you got quite a few, so that is good. I do know that the questions over the time has helped you sometimes add to that FAQ. So thank you all for the questions that you did send in, and I will kind of work on those and get them organized and send them off to Michelle and Kristen today. So thank you all for your participation and for being here. We had quite a few participants, so I think it was a hot topic today. And we will see you at our next webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Here.